Matt was digging under the porch when he found a rusty box. Inside, children's items and an old photograph. On the picture was his father. Then he opened the family album and saw her. A girl he was never told about. The truth turned out to be more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. Matt loved his dog, a golden retriever named Buck. His loyal companion followed him everywhere and was his only company after moving into a small house in the wilderness. Peace, nature, no neighbors, the perfect place for a fresh start. At first, everything was calm. But after a couple of weeks, Buck started acting strangely. He sniffed around the yard obsessively, fixating on the space beneath the porch, digging frantically. At first, Matt didn't think much of it. Dogs love to bury bones, and Buck had enough energy to run around for hours. But the dog's behavior became more alarming. At night, he howled, refusing to leave the porch, scratching at the ground until his paws bled. His claws left deep grooves in the dirt, his fur was caked with mud, and his eyes were filled with tension. Buck wouldn't budge, even when Matt called him inside. "Damn it, Buck! What the hell is down there?" Matt muttered in frustration as he tried once again to pull the dog away. But Buck only growled and dug his teeth into the earth, as if protecting something. Something was under the porch. This time, Matt didn't ignore his dog. A creeping sense of unease stirred inside him as he grabbed a shovel. The ground was soft, damp, as if it had been dug up before. Each thrust of the shovel sent dull, echoing thuds through the earth. A hollow sound. Another. Matt's pulse quickened. The shovel hit something hard. He crouched down, pushing the dirt away with his hands. In the glow of his flashlight, a rusty metal edge emerged from the soil. Something was buried here. Something that was never meant to be found. Matt carefully brushed away the damp earth with his hands. Hurried, nervous. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath. Beneath the thick layer of dirt, an old metal box emerged. Dark, rust-stained. It looked like it had been buried for decades. Who put it here? His pulse pounded in his temples. Something felt wrong about this moment. He didn't know what he was expecting, but deep down, he felt he shouldn't have found this. His hands trembled as he pulled out a knife and carefully pried open the lid. It resisted at first, creaking loudly, as if reluctant to reveal its secrets. Then, with a sudden snap, it gave way, releasing a dull, musty scent of age and dampness. Matt grimaced, but pressed on. Inside, a box of children's belongings. He froze. Oh God. Among the gray, time-pressed fabric scraps lay a tiny dress, once pink, now faded and dirty. A small, damp-stuck teddy bear with a worn, crooked smile. A pair of tiny shoes, so small they must have belonged to a girl no older than 5. A lump formed in Matt's throat. His fingers brushed against something hard. He pulled out a yellowed photograph and held it up to the light. A man in a worn cowboy shirt stood in the picture, holding a little girl in his arms. Matt's jaw clenched. The man's face was too familiar. He turned the photo over, scrawled across the back in faded ink. Lily, 1982. A crushing weight pressed against Matt's chest, making him dizzy. His eyes darted between the photograph, the box, the dirt-stained children's belongings, as if trying to make sense of it, but his mind already knew the answer. It was his father. Matt stood over the box, feeling reality slowly collapse around him. Children's belongings, a photograph, a name on the back. Lily. He had never heard that name in his family, not once. Who was she? Why were a little girl's things buried under his house? And why was his father in the photograph? Paul. His father had died 10 years ago, and in all his life, he had never once mentioned a girl named Lily, never spoke of a missing child, never left even the slightest hint. But deep inside, Matt knew. This was no coincidence. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. His fingers gripped the screen so tightly his knuckles turned white. Search. Missing children, 1982. Oregon. Scroll. His fingers froze. A missing child. Lily Johnson, 5 years old. Disappeared in 1982. Vanished in this very town. Matt couldn't breathe. His father. Could his father have been involved? Sweat ran down his back. The world seemed to shrink, pressing against his chest. He kept scrolling, his eyes darting across every word, until they landed on a photograph. A picture of Lily's parents. The woman's eyes. Something about them was familiar. Too familiar. His hands slowly brought the phone closer. His heart pounded against his ribs as the realization crashed over him. It was his mother. Matt felt his world collapsing before his eyes. His breath quickened, his palms grew sweaty, and his thoughts darted chaotically in his mind. Did my parents kidnap a child? Why? He couldn't believe it, but everything pointed to that very truth. Unable to stay still, he rushed into the house, tore through the storage closet, and grabbed the old boxes filled with family albums. He hadn't opened them in years, but now every photograph could be the key to solving the mystery. Flipping through the faded pages, he first saw only himself, a carefree child, laughing at the camera. But then his gaze stopped on her. A little girl with chestnut curls and bright eyes, but he had always known her by another name. Sarah. Matt froze, feeling the blood drain from his face. His whole life, he had believed she was his older sister. His parents told him she was adopted but never shared any details. There were no documents, no stories about her past, just vague answers. She simply found her home. Now everything fell into place. They had stolen her and raised her as their own. Matt began to tremble, his stomach twisting with nausea. How long had he been living with this truth, unaware of the horror buried within his own family? Buck sat beside him, panting heavily, ears pressed back, his eyes filled with unease. The dog had sensed the secret long before Matt had uncovered it himself. His throat tightened as he grabbed his phone. He had to find out the whole truth.